Hey everybody, Mrs. Lake here, and guess what time it is? It's notebook time! I know that you are as thrilled and excited as I am. I can just feel it coming to me even now as I'm doing this video. As you can tell this year, I dressed my notebook up a little bit, add some stickers to it. Please feel free to do the same to yours. Make them your own, dress them up, give them a little bit of an identity. Um, do what you want to with them. Just remember to bring them to class. That is the most important thing. Today we're going to start with our first lesson in our notebooks. But first of all, you need to open your notebook up and do your name page. As you can see, mine says Mrs. Lake. And I have 2021 up at the top. That way I know that this is my notebook for the school year of 2020-2021. I dare you to say that really fast, like more than once, because it's pretty much impossible. Next, when you flip over, you should have your table of contents. I flipped too far. Table of contents should look like this. You should have your table of contents at the top. Then you should have date and then page number. If you want to put title across the middle here, you can. I just kind of assume that the title will be here. Your first entry will be on for 819, and it will be story vocabulary, and it will go on page 1. So if you want to go ahead and put that in there, you can. On 819, story vocabulary will go on page 1. Now when you turn the page, you will come to your pocket for papers. Now this will come in handy because what you will have found by now is that you will have been given all of your stuff for your notebook for the week. So what you could do is cut all of this stuff out and put it in your pocket for papers. And then when it's time to do that lesson, you can just come back to your pocket for papers, pull it out, and put it in there. So next, we're going to flip over to page 1, which will be our story vocabulary lesson. At this point, you should have watched the YouTube video about the story of Little Red Riding Hood. And we're going to use the story of Little Red Riding Hood to kind of get our minds wrapped around the idea of basic story vocabulary again. Because even I'm sure over the summer, we've kind of forgotten, sometimes we can forget, basic things like what a plot is, what the setting is, what complications are, who the protagonists and the antagonists are. And the reality is we're getting ready to get a lot more in depth about these different parts of a story. But before we do that, I want us just to do a real quick reminder. The plot is the chain of events that make up a story. As we have here in Little Red Riding Hood, the plot is, while visiting her sick granny, Little Red Riding Hood finds the big bad wolf dressed as Granny and in her bed to trick Little Red Riding Hood so he can eat her. That's the plot or the gist or the story of Little Red Riding Hood. Plot is also, the story. What is the story of Little Red Riding Hood? The setting is the time and place of a story. In the case of Little Red Riding Hood, the setting is going to be in the woods. It's going to be at Granny's house. And the time can either be a long time ago or once upon a time. It really depends on what version of the story that you are reading, because I've heard it both ways. But the setting is basically when it happens. And setting is not just one thing. The setting is not just in the woods. You could, you say, well, the story's in the woods. Well, it's not just in the woods. It's in the wood at Granny's house once upon a time. So whenever you're giving an answer about, setting or plot, give the full answer. Don't give just, it was in the woods. Next, we have complications. What are complications? Complications are problems that arise as characters struggle to reach their goals. In the case of Little Red Riding Hood, her complications were that the big bad wolf eats Granny and pretends to be her. Makes it a bit difficult to give your Granny the food that you brought for her when she's been eaten by a wolf. So complications are anything in a story or any kind of problems that arise that keep your character from reaching their goal. And here's the thing, the longer a story, the more complicated a story, the more complications you're going to have. The thicker the plot will be. Little Red Riding Hood, the only complication is the big bad wolf. But, when we're reading a story like The Giver, there's going to be a lot more complications. When you watch a movie, there's not just one complication. There's normally a couple of things to get into our protagonist's way. It's the same thing with stories. It's the complications are what make things interesting, but they're also sometimes what can kind of annoy us because it's like, oh, just get out of the way. So in the case of Little Red Riding Hood, the wolf is the complication. And then I used the fancy word just a second ago, protagonist. It's the main character in a story. And in the case of Little Red Riding Hood is the protagonist of the story. And so then the antagonist is the character or force in conflict with the protagonist, or AKA the bad guy. So in Little Red Riding Hood, the antagonist is the big bad wolf. So protagonist, you can kind of remember as protagonist, good guy, antagonist, bad guy. So that is just a quick rundown of story vocabulary, just to kind of refresh our minds as to what plot, setting, complications, protagonists, and antagonists are. We'll remember this as we go into our next lesson, because we are about to break it down even further and take plot and break it down into 5 more parts. So if you need to now, you can pause this so that you can copy all of these notes and put them into your notebook. Thanks and have a great day.